We are living in the golden age of board gaming, an era of unprecedented board game ingenuity and popularity that has made its way into mainstream culture. A look at the numbers shows us that the amount of new board games released each year is increasing exponentially, that board game sales are continuing to increase, that average ratings of board games are increasing, and that the average complexity of board games is increasing. Meaning, more people are buying board games, more people are making board games, board game design is getting better, and people are craving more and more complex games. It's clear that board games have changed and risen dramatically in popularity over the last 10 to 20 years. It seems like every time I go into stores like Target or Barnes & Noble, the board game sections are getting bigger. But why? Well, I think there are three main reasons. It's not only board games that have changed in the last 20 years, it's the very world we live in. The internet is responsible for many amazing things, but it's also responsible for some incredibly bad things, such as ripping apart the very fabric of human social systems. People are more connected than ever, but it's a hollow connection. The fact is, human interaction is just not the same and certainly not as meaningful when it's through Facebook or Instagram than it is in person. In today's world, we're having fewer and fewer social interactions with our friends in person, so the natural reaction is to fight against this, and to try to get those in-person interactions back. Board gaming provides a great reason to get together with your friends. Video games used to fulfill that same desire, but over the past 15 years or so, the video game industry has purposefully dropped the ball. In the 90s and early 2000s, when you wanted to get together with your friends, you'd be more likely to play video games together than board games. But modern video games no longer incentivize physical interactions. Everything has become online multiplayer. The days of couch co-op, playing Mario Kart or Super Smash Bros. Shoulder to shoulder with your friends, has largely come to an end. Where video games left a gap in the market, board games have come to reclaim it, and that gap is more important than it ever has been. So the failures of the internet age have played a large role in the rise of board games, but so have the successes of the internet. Pre-internet, if you wanted to publish and widely distribute your board game, you had to be Hasbro. But now, with crowdfunding sites like Kickstarter, there are hundreds of independent board game designers. And thanks to ever-increasing global connections in trade, the audience of any one designer is worldwide. You no longer need to buy board games directly from stores. No matter where you live, you can get the board game you want sent to you. This influx of new designers and a more accessible product has led to rapid innovations in game design. A look at the changes in popular board game mechanics shows us some pretty interesting things. The concept of roll and move or spin and move that well-known games like Monopoly, Life, and Sorry employ has fallen remarkably in the last 20 years. In fact, to include this mechanic in your game nowadays is essentially shooting yourself in the foot. And other mechanics, like hand management, area control, co-op, and deck building have increased in popularity. Not only are board games embracing new and more complex mechanics, they're also embracing storytelling. Games are no longer limited to one play session. More and more games are thinking long-term, making a game's story span several play sessions, having the game evolve each time you play it. All these new features of board games provide something of interest for just about anybody. And that shows in the shift of audience. It's both a cause and a consequence. Board games are no longer just for children and hardcore strategists. This change is largely due to video games. When video games were new, they were for a specific group of people. There was a stigma against adults playing video games, and indeed that stigma remains in some people's minds to this day. But as the video game player base grew up and had kids of their own and continued to play games, that perception has largely gone away. And it's benefited the board game industry as well. But that's not all. It's not just an acceptance of gamers, it's a full-on celebration. In the 80s, to be a nerd, you had to like things like fantasy and science fiction and mythology. Nowadays, just about every kid likes those things, and the difference between a nerd and a regular kid is how capable you are of talking about something else. There are many sources for this change, but I would point to the biggest one being the movie industry. It probably started with Star Wars in 1977, but that snowball took a while to get rolling. There was the massive success of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, the worldwide craze of Harry Potter, and now the Marvel Cinematic Universe that seems like it will carry on until the heat death of the universe, all making science fiction, fantasy, and more broadly, nerd culture cool. All of these changes have led us to where we are now. Board games are popular because they stimulate our brains with things we can touch. They provide us with a communal activity to do with our friends that create laughter, conversation, and friendly competition or cooperation in our own homes. They have evolved since the days of Monopoly and Battleship to become complex puzzles or epic adventure sagas or contests of deception and cunning. They allow us to engage in exercises of imagination that adults have been denied of by misguided societal standards for far too long. We're living in a golden age of board gaming, and it's no accident. It's a good thing. So continue playing games. And if you want to play board games but don't know where to start, then here are some suggestions.